All right, we are on air. It is Thursday, December 21st. This is a meeting to talk about active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. First and foremost, we have a new community member this week. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, but I think it's Cleomash has submitted a maintainer application for Backdrop Contrib. So thanks for coming and thanks for joining. There's no modules yet in that request to join. So I pointed out that anyone can join the Contrib group as long as we get 2 people who are already maintainers to vouch for that person. I also post a link to all of our current maintainers in there. So if you find any friends or people you're working with in that list, people might know you from your work in Drupal or your work together on other projects and be able to bring you in before you have code to show. So that's exciting. Also, we had a ton of activity in Contrib in the last week. We had 5 new modules: freeze frame, 5-star voting API, node notify, and SEO meta tags. Most of those are new. SEO meta tags is a new release, I believe. We also got a new theme, which is something we don't get very often. We got a copy of Bootstrap Lite, which is pretty exciting. Also in the last week, I have deployed some of the changes for our new homepage design. So the new drop-down menu is up there, and the new footer with several new design elements is there as well. There were some elements of the drop-down menu that were not in the design file, so we could definitely use some direction on things like hover state and active indicators. So if anyone has any inspiration looking at those and knows how we can improve it, that's still could do some work. And Jeff, I know last week I had, or maybe it was in the previous meeting today, there was a pull request for the ways to try backdrop page that didn't make it into this agenda, but I still have it on my list to take a look at that one. The forum site, since I added the new drop-down menu to the main site and the forum site navigation was having a little trouble, I just applied the same changes there as well and also put up the new footer. So those it's now using the same theme on both sites, which is great. The forum site has one additional thing that we're working on there, and that has a bunch of flag links on forum topics to do things like follow a specific conversation or mark a comment is spam or abusive. And so we could definitely use some feedback on design styles for those flag links. So if anyone's using the forum and feels inspired and knows a good way to make those useful and pretty, we definitely could use some feedback in that area too. But for the most part, I think it is fine as it is now. Always room for improvement. So I think that's all we have going on in the world of other backdrop properties. So I'd like to turn it over to Nate to talk about what's going on with Backdrop CMS itself.
Yeah, so I feel like I always just need to start off talking about our next deadline, which is the feature freeze on January 1st. That applies to all new functionality that we're adding into Backdrop, the product. Does not particularly restrict bug fixes and UX changes, though. So January 15th will be the next release of Backdrop CMS, Backdrop 1.9. But before we get into that, I'll cover the next bug fix release, which is 1.8.1. There's been a huge batch of pull requests in the queue to fix minor issues throughout Backdrop. And I've been going through those this morning and getting, I knocked out the RTBC queue. Thank you everybody for your pull requests and for the reviews. I mean, I love having things in the RTBC queue. And I merged like at least 3/4 of them because they truly were RTBC. So that is a huge time saver. Yeah, it's so great. So it's still a little uncertain if 1.81 will happen before 1.9 will. But at the very least, we always cut a bug fix release at the same time as any new minor version. So if January 15th were to roll around, we would cut 1.9.0 and 1.8.1 at the same time. I think we'll probably do something before that, because continuing our kind of most optimistic release patterns, what we want to do is on January 1st release a preview release of 1.9. And so I think the preview release date would be a good time to also cut a 1.8.1 release while we're doing the tagging and releasing. So let's see. In the world of 1.8.1, I don't think I'm going to go over the individual issues, but if you've been rolling patches or rolling PRs for 1.8.1, check in on those. I've been leaving code reviews on things that have been getting knocked back to needs work. Let's see. I don't think there's any in here I particularly want to call out. I'm still working on going through all of them. This is Nina. Okay, so that's it for 1.8.1. Basically, just continuing to roll on through bug fixes. Thank you guys for all the changes and PRs. 1.9. 1.9 is the next minor release that will be coming out January 15th, and a feature freeze on January 1st. The big items, well, the big items that I'd like to see completed are the ability to edit an existing file and uploading a file manually, which are issues 2796 and 2633, some media enhancements, basically, that would make managing files a little bit easier. It's pretty modest, 2 chunks of functionality there, so I'm still, even though we've been like kind of dragging our feet on this the whole release cycle, I'm still optimistic that we can get those completed in the next 10 days, basically. So those are the key items. Let's see. I'd like to get this in for 1.9. Sorry, there's an item added here to the agenda, issue 2910. Which is add the option to disable, translation links. Oh, of course. This one was brought up. Yeah, this one, what is going on here? We can definitely make that happen. There's already a pull request for doing that. So I'll put my eyeballs on that and see if we can get that reviewed. Let's see. We also brought up last week issue 704, config translation. Which is a really interesting issue and would be totally amazing. I think that we have time to start the implementation, but I'm not sure we'd have time to do the conversion because translating stuff that's stored in config files would touch a lot of different systems. Even if we get the base system completed, doing all the conversions would be a real trick for 1.9. So there's been some great conversation in issue 704, though. I actually had my colleague, Hayrocker, take a look at this. And he actually, he was the CMI lead in Drupal 8. And he took a look at it and said, this is actually what I wanted to do initially, which I was really surprised about. I thought that he would always thought we shouldn't put any metadata in the config files, but he actually suggested basically exactly what we're doing as his initial implementation, which is great because it seems like we've basically been taking all of his initial implementations. The original CMI is what Backdrop ended up using and is in core today. So in a way, we're basically just continuing to take we're taking Greg's previous ideas that didn't fit into the world of Drupal and then getting them implemented in Backdrop instead. So that was a nice confirmation. So I think that we should proceed right along with that implementation of just listing the strings that need to be translated in the config files and then roll along with that. Let's see. I don't know. We could also discuss. I feel like I don't want to be the exclusive arbiter on this one, but we could also discuss like putting in the API and then letting 1.9 kind of gestate as we do the conversions because they're backwards compatible. There's no real reason that we couldn't do them over like bug fix releases, but I feel like intentionally planning like, hey, we're going to slowly implement this feature over the course of a release via bug fixes is not really, I don't know, it's not what we intended bug fixes to be made for. So
Yeah, I'm happy with the progress there, and I'm fine with officially moving that to 110 and continuing planning. So I'm for that plan.
okay, yeah. As always, like there's no reason why we can't really push forward on features that aren't meant for the next release. Like it's actually a really good thing if we start planning a release or two out. And the next release actually is not that far out, since we'll start on it in earnest on January 15th. So okay. Well, I still think that's a great thing to be talking about on a regular basis, as long as we're moving forward on config translation. That's a huge, very important piece of functionality for Backdrop and for internationalization in particular. It would just be a great boon to get that really a big step above where Drupal 7 is. So that would be great. Okay, that's it for the Backdrop product update. We can go into general discussions, a Q&A. If you guys have anything that you guys would like to bring up that we haven't talked about. Jen says rabbit hole. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So these are just some comments Olaf left in Gitter before the meeting. One of them was we decided to move rabbit hole the module forward for use on Backdrop for Good to create translatable nodes that can be placed as blocks, essentially, that don't have paths that can be accessed. But in working on that module, they ran into a couple of problems, particularly around Backdrop access denied and Backdrop not found. So there's an issue open against the module asking if it should be fixed in the module, and then there's an issue against core asking if it should be fixed in core. So my recommendation is, we know we can fix it in the module. I said, let's fix it in the module and add a code comment that links to the core issue. So if we can figure out how to fix it in core, we can roll back the fix in contrib, but at least people using the module aren't having a problem. But I think the bigger problem is to figure out why the thing in core that's supposed to set a page title isn't setting a page title, and the node title is showing through, or the taxonomy term title on those pages. So there might be something about the way we're handling like node modules page callback or menu title callback or something that is not properly affected by Backdrop not found or Backdrop access denied. That might deserve a deeper look at how those things are being handled when there's a context present. For some reason, this problem doesn't seem to be happening for users, so it just seems to be on the node path callback and on the taxonomy term callback. So that might be worth looking into. It could be that we've accidentally discovered a core bug, which we could get fixed in the next release. And then the other thing that Olaf recommended talking about today was there are a bunch of user experience issues and developer experience issues for views based on improvements that had gone into Drupal 8. And I looked over all of them. I think they're all pretty good. They're all going to be, I think, pretty easy to implement. So if we have anyone with a couple minutes between now and 1.9, we could go ahead and get that feature parity between Backdrop and Drupal 8. I think it'll be an improvement for most people using Backdrop to have those features there.
So those are issues 2920, 2921, and 2922.
Yep.
Cool. Oh yeah, these are nice. Oh, nice. A new contributor too. Simone 960. Welcome. Okay, great. So basically some things that we can all powwow on and review together. Okay.
That's all I have is feedback from Olaf. Is there anything else anyone else wants us to talk about? Jeff, do you want to do an update on Fact Check for Good stuff?
We got a couple applications, so we're proceeding with those. Laren's taking the lead on one of them, and one of them we're awaiting feedback from the not the client. What are we calling them? Partners, from the partner. So things are good and steady.
Great.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, let's call it. We've got holiday travel and things to proceed with. Oh, hey, Mike, you came in right at the tail end here. We were about to end the meeting. We might end it anyway. But it's great to see your little shining avatar. All right. I think we're going to end it. Okay. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.
Merry Christmas, guys.